Call meeting to order at 6:01. We'll begin with the pledge of allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, everyone. For those who are here for the public in attendance, we have a sign-in sheet. If you want to comment later and on the agenda, and for those who are online, you can put your name in the chat that we can see and use as a sign-in sheet that way. Okay, first order of business is approval of the agenda or motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Tara. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Consent agenda. Is there anything someone would wish to pull out of the consent agenda if you had questions about or needed to make changes to anything in the consent agenda?
I think there's something added for coaching for Middletown Springs. Sean Mark is supposed to be added.
Yeah, that's added. That was amended.
There's an, oh, okay, not really long. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Unanimous. Superintendent's reports, everyone should have received.
I'm sorry, Eric.
Yeah.
Should we send some kind of a thank you to Lisa for her generous donation,
Oh, yeah, you mean
a letter or
letter or
something? What would be appropriate?
I guess the letter would be appropriate, or you can just thank her publicly.
Okay, public is fine. Thank you.
All right, for the reports, everyone should have received all those superintendents and principals reports. It's informational, so did anyone from the board have any questions for the superintendent? All right, hearing none, any questions for the principals? All right. It's getting up.
Can I make another comment? There was a really nice advertisement on the back page of one of the sections of the Herald today for Greater Rutland County. I thought it was a well done job. Really, you guys, your schools.
Thank you. All right. We're on finance. I can give you a few minutes if you like. We can skip around. You're in the hot seat, Lily. What's that?
I can jump right in if you want.
Yeah.
So the updated budget was in the packet. We're now looking at the third draft of the budget. There was only a few changes since the last draft. So at the last SU board meeting, the SU board approved PRCSU budget. There was no changes to the central office budget at that meeting, so that assessment stayed the same. But there was a change to the special ed budget. It was just one staffing change, so it did increase the budget a little bit, so that is reflected in here and did result in a small increase in the Wells Springs assessment for special ed. So that's the first item. The second one, which is a lot larger, is the secondary tuition. By this time, we received bills from hopefully all schools where we tuition out secondary students to, 7 through 12. And as of the last meeting, we still haven't received some bills, so we were still going on some estimates. Based on the new tuition bills, we did add 6 new students to our secondary roster, which is increasing secondary tuition significantly. Secondary tuition is now $163,000. So we're seeing a lot of move-ins that weren't there before. That's increasing our total secondary enrollment. So right now, so those are the 2 changes that are reflected in this budget. The other piece, which I just got today, it's not reflected in this budget, which is reflected in the next month, is the vocational numbers. We did get Stafford's tuition. They're looking at a 6.46% increase in their tuition rate. On top of that, Wells Springs FTE for vocational, they use a 6-semester rolling average to calculate what your annual cost is. So your FTE did increase. I think this semester you saw a big bump in the number of students attending Stafford. So that does increase your total cost. Like I said, that's not reflected in this budget right now, but because I just got that information today. But we would be looking at, so your total local expense for Stafford is going to be $33,000 compared to what's in the budget right now is your local piece is $25,000. So that's another $8,000 or so. And then the state piece will increase your expense, but that has no impact on your educational spending because there's an offsetting revenue. The state portion is $39,000 compared to what's in the budget right now is $28,000. So that's another $11,000. So unfortunately, we're seeing increases coming at us from all areas, and it's really hard to account for all of it and keep a steady flat budget. So that's what we're facing, not just at this budget, but in other districts in our SU. The state commissioner's letter came out on December 1st, and statewide right now they're estimating educational spending being up 8.5%, which is a pretty substantial number. So based on that, they did provide some estimates on the yield. I have not put that into this. There's still pieces that we're missing before we could really estimate a tax rate. We need to replace pupils. We need to have CLA. Both pieces we should have by the next meeting. They're due out December 15th. And then once we have all those pieces, we can kind of see what the impact is on the tax rate. But based on the estimated increase of the 8.5% statewide, they're estimating that the taxpayers' increase is going to be approximately 3.7%. So, and that's based on taking that 8.5% and then using the increases to the yield, which offset taxes. And so that is assuming that you have a flat equalized pupils and a flat CLA. So those 2 pieces, which are more localized, will influence those numbers either up or down. Wells Springs right now is below that 8.5 threshold, so that, I guess one sense of good news. Not by a lot, but, so right now expenses up by 349, which is 6.4%, and education spending is up by 369, which is 7.4%. I know we've talked about ways to mitigate that a little bit, which I'm sure we'll talk about tonight again in open session and executive session. So those impacts will lower this a little bit if we make those changes. Any questions?
I'd say things like that.
I hate delivering bad news. The secondary tuition is one of those things where we have absolutely no control over. I mean, tuition rate, and we're still estimating 3% tuition rate increase. And we don't know what the schools are going to do. 3% is typically the average for what today's environment.
Yeah.
One of your biggest secondary schools would be Corey Valley, and they will be doing their announced tuition at the next meeting this month. And I am recommending
Questions, please?
Yeah, so it was last year, was it that the state had a surplus that kicked into the school budget? Is that the yield, or is that something different?
so that is a component of the yield. So the yield is that factor which they have all, they take all of the money that we're going to spend, education spending statewide, and put it pretty much all in a bucket with Act 68, and then determine what the yield needs to be in order to balance that budget and equalize taxes across the state. So with that surplus, they bought down the amount of education spending that was being used to help increase that yield. As the yield increases, local tax rates go down. So I think last year they used approximately, I think, 33 million. Then they used some for the free food service, free for all students. I think that was approximately 29 million. And then they put another chunk of money into other programs, which I don't have to talk about.
So the yield estimate that you got, does that include potential like surpluses that get reimbursed?
I don't have the details of that. I believe there is a surplus that is being factored into that. It's not quite as large as it was last year. I know I have a monthly VASBO meeting where the state will come and talk this Friday and give us sort of an update on how realistic that yield that was proposed is, and about the 8.5%, and other things that are going on in today's environment that will impact our tax rates. So I will know more Friday, and I know that doesn't really help us today, but we're not looking at approving the budget today, so we do have a little bit more time to help make decisions. Unfortunately, there's not a lot going in our favor this year.
I mean, I'm not looking for an exact figure, what are we looking for a total complete dollars, the tuition students, stuff like that, for the increase? Came up with 11,000, 8,000, and 100,000, what are we looking at total?
For tax rate,
Yeah,
I mean, best guess at this point with what our education spending is based on what the state is using for yield. If we don't, without CLA, but I don't know what CLA is doing. I would say you're going to probably be around 4 or 5%. I mean, I hate to guess. And you may know.
Could you repeat the question? I didn't hear it at all.
The question was what my guess would be, what we'd be looking at as the tax rate increase. But as I said, I mean, we still have some factors that are unknown at this point. And the CLA could have a pretty big impact. And for those of you who are not familiar with the CLA, that's common level appraisal. And that's based on how home sales are doing compared to assessed value. And so if home values are selling higher than assessed value, that brings down the CLA and increases property taxes. And so for the last few years, we've seen hot real estate prices and selling way above assessed values, and it's starting to come down now, but I think a lot of the damage has already been done. It uses a 3-year average, so I think we'll have at least 2 good years, not good in our favor, but good as far as home values go, that are affecting that CLA. And then if that CLA gets below 80, the town has to do a reappraisal. So last year, we were looking at CLAs. Middletown was 92.61 and Wells was 89.
So this, the total expense in this third graph, 349,000, that's primarily the secondary tuition and the,
Secondary tuition is 162,000,
yeah,
a little less than.
and then the rest of it is from the SU budget, or?
No, so SU, so about half of it is the secondary tuition. SU budget, special ed is up about 58,000. Central office assessment is down by 1,100. So you're seeing, but offsetting the assessment, let me go actually to the SU. The SU's impact on Wells Springs. So the central office assessment is down by 1,100. Special ed is actually down by $2,000 when you net special ed assessment and special ed billbacks. And then the regular ed billbacks is down, but that's just more of a reclass from special ed, from SU to local. The rest of it, the other half really is health insurance increases, wage increases, the two agreements that we settled last year, as well as some non-union increases that we will talk about later. Health insurance is at 12.7%, which is almost $40,000. Very small increase in transportation expense, just based on CPI. So I would say the two major factors are employee benefits and compensation and secondary tuition.
Is this a good time to, I guess maybe to you, Eric, is this a good time to talk about proposals in terms of cuts?
No, they didn't take discussion. There's personnel discussions. There's some personnel discussion with that, so, yeah. So just because of what some of those proposals are.
Yeah, pertaining to personnel, yes.
Does that include food services?
No,
No.
those discussions just got bumped.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think last session, I understand we're up against, we have a timing issue. And I guess I asked last time if we could push back the contract for food services, so we could, have a bigger, broader discussion on it. So did we buy ourselves an extra month?
or,
My completed RFP is due to the state by January.
okay. So if we were making decisions, we necessarily can make them tonight, or we can do it and give it to you that first meeting in January.
Yes. I think we can- January, I think they need to go to the beginning of January. That's the first time.
We mentioned earlier that you weren't necessarily looking for an approval on the budget, correct?
I mean, we need to do it by January.
Usually we do it in December.
We had that in December.
So that primarily you're just waiting on final numbers to.
I think with all the stuff going on, I think it'll be best.
Gotcha. That makes sense. All right. So I guess the next piece, sorry.
I was gonna say, I think this yield, I'm just looking at it even closer right now with your tax rate calculation thing. This is a pretty significant jump in the yields. So I would, I'd like to hear what they have to say, on what the state has to say on Friday to see if this is really doable, what the legislators can go with, because when putting this yield into the calculation, it's not terrible.
And that contains like the surplus, and that they're gonna potentially put it all back into the taxpayers, so that, you know.
Yeah.
So Louis, a quick question for you. There was a news article about a surplus in the Department of Education at 24 million. Is that something that would help support? Is this the pool that can kind of get split up to help support schools or?
If the legislators use that surplus to affect the yield, then yes, that's what would impact this, will impact the yield and then impacts the tax rates. They could also decide to use it for other things like food service or other programs that they feel is priority for this year. We won't know that until the legislators start meeting and deciding how to use those funds.
I think the governor's recommendation might be that to refund it all. Okay, all right, so I think no one has any other questions for those pertaining to the third draft.
When do they have, I know when they meet, they have to start meeting, when do they finish and start making decisions on that? Oh, they don't get on that very quick about that.
The yield is usually one of the last things that's approved.
And is it the budget gonna be approved?
Typically-
before the year is
Typically, no, I mean, well, that would make sense, but the yield usually isn't approved until after town meetings. April,
That's what
sometimes
usually gets us,
May.
because we have to approve everything before we know what we're
Yeah,
gonna do next.
so you're approving a budget pretty much based on estimates and blindly, not knowing that one large factor. I mean, I think based on state discussions, we have a pretty good sense as to what the yield will be. And in my experience, at least in the last few years, the yield has generally gone higher than what they talked about, which is
Which would be
good for
beneficial,
schools.
but we don't know when they can do anything they want, we have to approve the budget before we know, and they can turn it around the opposite way and make it.
And that's always been the case. And there's been talk through the years of pushing back down.
Okay.
At this time, this is what we're looking at.
So there's no definite, we're making a decision on something we're not even sure.
All right, question. Is this an appropriate time to talk transportation, or is that executive session?
No, I think some of the proposals that we put out to the community around transportation, food service, I think those are all essential. I think the only thing that really would be anything personnel related, we should have to discuss that in executive session. Sure.
So, okay, so I had a question on transportation. I think the outstanding item was we were gonna check to see if potentially we could get out of our contract.
Yes, there is a clause in our current contract that does allow us to cancel the contract if there's a change in demand or loss of function.
And I was gonna say that's probably, I don't know what you had planned, but I think that would be the next discussion piece for this budget part would be talk about the food service proposal and changes to after-school programs. I know, you know, some stuff was tossed around about transportation, but
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think,
Yeah, I know that there was a lot of things going on at the last meeting, so really exciting. What's the matter with some impact? I can provide you the numbers.
Okay, if we get rid of the food program, the food service program.
Well, not get rid of
We'll get-
it, so just,
Change.
so change it.
Yes, I'm sorry, change it. And that effect, the effect of this, dismissing the busing. And then, what did we do? It was the food service, the busing, one or the other, and then both of them. And then just, see what that was. Is that what we came up with? If we change the food service program, what do we save on the, or, I don't think we're gonna save anything.
We talked about approximately 70,000.
70,000, but with what you said, the tuition and stuff like that, we're not doing anything around that.
Well, I mean, from what we looked at last time, correct, but I mean, you're still impacting the budget based on.
Amanda?
Louis, I could have just missed it, but do you have something stating like a better breakdown for our contract with Betcha, like cost per driver and what it would look like if we thought about changing that, maybe one bus instead of two, or just throwing some ideas out there? Do we have those numbers?
I mean, we don't have, we know what our total contract cost is, and we know that we have two buses. So if we were to go down to one bus, we would just cut that in half. For our current transportation cost, I believe we talked about last month, was like $95,000, $98,817. So if we were to eliminate both buses, you would look at total savings. If you were to eliminate one of those buses, you'd be looking at approximately $47,000 in savings, $48,000, $49,000.
Okay.
I mean, the amount of change, there's two factors that affect that price. I mean, there's the cost of the transportation. This is a net cost to the district. We do receive approximately 45% back in reimbursement for our to from school transportation. So this isn't the actual cost that we're paying Betcha. Our cost is a lot higher than this. We're receiving revenue from the state, which is offsetting. So the transportation revenue does have a lag. So the revenue this year is based on 2020 revenue, 2020 expense. So if you were to, so as you're cutting, you're affecting your future year's revenue. But I mean, if you were to cut just one bus this year, it's not an exact, I say you cut it in half, but we'd have to look at what the revenue is and what that impact will be. So next year's, it was a 2-year lag, so we're in FY23, so this is based on FY21 revenue, or FY21 expense. So next year's budget, it would be based on this year's expense. So you take your total expense, you submit that to the state, and there's a statewide appropriation, so they look at the total transportation expense for the whole state, and they compare that to the appropriation, they come up with a percentage. Typically around 45%, that's what it used to be. It may be a little bit slightly different based on how people's transportation expenses have been increasing. And then we apply that transportation revenue to the full contract to lower everybody's costs. And that's only on to or from school. So it doesn't affect like co-curriculars or your after school, special ed or anything like that.
Well, they're not gonna say we could come and change the food.
And my estimate was about $70,000.
Yeah, can you summarize those potential changes again?
So currently we run an in-house run food service program. So we hire the staff. We purchase the food. So all of the expenses are flowing directly through Wells Springs. We're in charge of the daily operation, hiring, managing staff, or ordering food. The change would be shifting away from that and going to a vended food service. So our other schools in our SU are on a vended food service program. So that means is that we're going out to bid this year. So we go out to bid for a vendor. There's 3 main vendors in the state that provide food service to all Vermont schools. Once we pick a vendor, they're in charge of, the staff would be on their payroll, they're in charge of hiring, managing staff, they're in charge of daily operations, they do all the ordering, they hold purchasing contracts so they get better prices on the ordering. They have different salary scales, different kind of packages. So that all affects the cost. The other side of that, the other piece of that is that you'd be in piece of the GRCSU food service program, which is a lot larger program. So right now you're subsidizing your program, I think approximately $90,000 because of your size, you're not producing enough meals to cover the labor costs and the food costs, and especially at the rate that you're paying for those costs. Being a part of a larger program, which it does have, it's going to have lower salaries and benefits, so you have savings. The whole program would have savings there. Better prices on the foods, you have savings there. But the other piece of that is that because you're part of that larger program, all of the schools are feeding into this one bucket. So if you're not covering as much, but the other schools are making more, that's still all going into the same bucket. If the total program ends with a surplus at the end of the year, everybody's enjoying that surplus. We're not divvying it up based on how many meals one school served or how many meals the program served. The GRCSU food service program ended with a surplus last year of $155,000 and $55,000 a year for that. And they're estimating that this year, where you are subsidizing your program $90,000, they're running a surplus. So you would be looking at potentially going from subsidizing your program by $90,000. I'm estimating $70,000, which is still leaving $20,000 in your budget, but it would potentially go down to $0.
If we made that shift to food service, how does it work for students and meals? I can't remember if we had talked about this before at some point, whether it be the SU or locally, but so, I mean, can students go back if they're still hungry, or like, how does that work?
I mean, it should work the same in every school because it's a federal program. So right now in the current program that we're in, the first meal is free for everybody. All students are allowed to go back unlimited times for fruit and vegetables. It's unlimited fruits and vegetables for any meal that they're purchased or if they're free. But second meals would be at a cost, no matter if it was an in-house program or if it was a self-run program. I'm sorry, in-house self-run program or a vendor program. You would still have, I think all of our schools have a salad bar in some shape or form, based on the school's desires. Some are different than others. And you can still have Carol and Rick will still have management over that staff as far as making menu suggestions and helping set that menu or food service times and how the program is run. But they are managing it and they're working closely with the administrators. Work closely with administrators in every school. They would manage the freshman vegetable program if you have that and qualify for that. If you have after school snacks, they take care of that as well. They work with your program staff to make sure that you have everything you need.
So Louis, just to clarify for people who might not be as familiar, starting next fall, there is no more universal hot lunch funding, correct?
That's unknown at this time. What was passed was a 1-year universal meals program. And then it was to be discussed further in this year's legislative session. If they do decide to extend it, it's going to be a matter of how are they funding it. And if they use that surplus, or if they use ed funds to fund that, then that's less money they have to go towards increasing that yield. They've also talked about extending it but not funding it, and letting that funding be at the local level, which then becomes another item to put into your budget. In order to be in that free meals, they put us into a Provision 2 program, which is a program that has been around before universal meals, and it's sort of it's a program that allows you to offer free meals to everybody, and so right now we're in a base year. Provision 2 didn't work for our schools in the past because our free and reduced numbers weren't high enough. So the cost was too high to really justify, unless the board wanted to kick that money in to make universal meals thing. So we are in the Provision 2 program, so even if the state decided not to extend universal meals, the school could decide to stay in that Provision 2 program and continue to offering free meals, and then absorb that additional cost to offer free meals to everybody.
Amanda?
Louis, do you know on average what the salary difference may look like for the staffing with this switch? Is it a big hourly difference, or do we know if it's about the same?
I mean, I don't have exact numbers, but I would guesstimate that their salaries are in the mid-teens. And it would be lower than our current salaries.
You say again really quick what the cost saving is again, this switch?
I'm estimating 70,000.
All right, does anyone have any other questions? Food service? I think the next piece is after-school program. What changes could be made that would affect the budget, and how would it look, for students and families, I guess?
I mean, I think there's, two main options that the board and the administration can decide on. Right now you run a program that is highly subsidized by the budget. So if the funding was cut for that program, obviously one choice is it's not for the program. The other option would be to have a program that's run solely on parents paying. And there's two mechanisms for that. There's the child care subsidy, which is through the state. So for those students that qualify for that child care subsidy, the schools would need to participate in that program. And then for those parents that don't qualify for that subsidy, there would be a cost to participate in the program, and we would need to make sure that that program is self-sustaining, so that the money that we're bringing in through that subsidy and that parent payments is enough to fund our staff any other costs associated with supplies or whatever.
So if we had to, I think it's really important to the community that we have an after-school program, so goes to the board of having to cut funding, then, use a model like Tapestry and to make sure that we can provide the support for the families.
Yeah, is there any projections of the cannabis tax? 'Cause that's gonna go towards after-school programming, summer programming.
I know we talked about that a little bit last month. I have not heard anything
Okay.
from the state or my counterparts on what their estimates are or how that money is going to be applied to those programs, whether there'll be state grants that are offered that will be competitive or whether it'll be just a general funding. I don't want to speak to something I just don't have any information on. And this year's probably the main first year that they're really collecting that. So they may really, I know a lot of times they enact things before they really build how it's gonna run, so that they may not even decide how it's.
We never did that. We never did that.
And I know they said it's focused specifically for after school and summer. I just don't know how they're gonna, yeah, like you said, disperse it. Amanda?
We were also looking at the staff to student ratio for after school program as well. Last month that we had talked about, I don't know if that's actually something we're still looking at or not, but I still feel like that's something that we should be looking at more.
Well, for us, Middletown Springs, we have a licensed program and meet state requirements and very, very precise ratios that we have to stay within. And at this point, we are just right at the minimum. So, yeah, there's no excess. There hasn't been any excess staff in it for at least our program. I don't know about yours.
Ours has been up and down because of the bus issue, where we can never tell how many students are going to be here, so we have a certain amount of people on staff. But moving forward, since we have both buses again, I think it's something we can really look at and analyze it better to have the right ratio of staff there. But it's very difficult because we never know the number.
We went from a daily, to a weekly schedule or monthly schedule, that, coordinating and keep all that. So in other words, instead of every day figuring out, we just had, people sign up for the bond every week.
For Middletown Springs, we're pretty consistent. Yeah, we have, we ask the parents to give us an idea at the start of the school year, like how many days a week they're going to use the program. So it's been pretty consistent. So, yeah, it really has been a.
Okay. I know, like a gym membership or like, for example, daycare, you pay, and if you're not using it, we went to that model, that potentially.
Absolutely.
Definitely, yeah.
Any other questions about the budget? Do you have anything else, Louis?
There was the announced tuition in the packet. So each year we have to set an announced tuition for students that are from other districts that are attending our school. So what on that sheet I provided, I showed how your tuition compares to other districts currently. that are our neighboring districts. We currently charge $15,000 for elementary school tuition. Typically, you only have anywhere between 0 to 3 students, something like that. And they're typically at Middletown. They're Irish students. Maybe occasionally we get another one student here or there, but not a lot. And then preschool tuition, which also you periodically get at both schools. That's set by the state, and that's currently $3,656. So my recommendation right now is to do, it's approximately a 3% increase, $15,500.
Yep, okay, so every year we approve this. You're looking for a motion to approve this announced tuition rate, $15,500.
I'll make
I'll
a
make that
motion.
motion.
Heard George first. Any discussion on the announced tuition rate? All right, all those in favor of approving the announced tuition rate, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. And is that it for now? All right, so in the packet is the survey results from our budget survey. I guess did anyone have any questions regarding the survey? And so we had a total of 174 responses. Yeah, I don't know what to think of the numbers. I mean, it's only a small, not a lot, I think, but it's, I think, in the long run, having some information rather than and I'll say I don't think it's something that we can make a budgetary decision on, but still. But if anyone had any other questions or wanted to bring anything up, now would be the time.
Do you have a copy of what the survey looked like before?
Yeah.
Can I see that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I give it to you. If you want to read it, I can give it to you later.
Yeah.
I have some here.
Yeah. Not from Jim.
I have a whole stack of them filled out.
Fill them out, send it yourself, and get out all your doing.
Oh, jeez. I don't have that much time to work.
And these would be ordered of priority?
Yeah, those are the responses to the questions.
No, they're just numbering basically. They're just numbers.
Okay.
They're not priority order.
God, I hope that's not priority.
Okay, we'll move on to policy. So we have two second reading policies, G4 and H3. If you look at motion to adopt these tonight.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Amanda. Any discussion on these two policies? All those in favor of adopting G4 and H3, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And then I'll just kind of go over, we have some new policies in here. So we have G11, public complaints on personnel. This was brought to the policy committee because we don't have a policy that people to, I guess, a method of resolving complaints. And this is a new policy. If you have any suggestions or recommendations to change.
Is this the one that had the 2 pages long before I sent it back?
No,
This is another one?
this is something completely different. I think you sent back, was it interscholastic sports?
Nope, it was one about personnel, how to rectify a situation.
Okay,
This looks like it's this, but cut down significantly.
It does the complaints on instructional materials.
yeah.
For the material, this is, okay.
This is a completely new policy. It's a model VSDA policy. So, and it just kind of, basically kind of outlines the chain of command as methods for resolving complaints.
But, well, I have a comment on it. I thought that there could be some time element to it, because it was, as I read it, it was a complaint to that individual, then if you didn't get anywhere, the supervisor. If you didn't get anywhere there, the principal, and then potentially the board. But if you're a parent and your child's in that situation, that might be a lot of time for it to go from point A to point Z. So maybe there's some sort of expectation of how long the process should take between steps.
Okay.
So,
Right.
Is this about public complaints, not complaints of a parent?
Say that again.
I feel like this is about public complaints, not like complaints from a parent or I'm sure there's other discipline or some other type of policy that manages complaints from a parent.
well, I may have read it.
Well, I think the policy covers any complaints. I don't think it's specific to parents. It could be, and it does, doesn't specifically say.
I mean, I'm not opposed to a timing element because I think these things dragging out don't benefit anybody. But I just thought it was about public, not parents necessarily.
Right. Well, I know some other policies have timelines, to resolve stuff. Did you have any other suggestions?
Yeah, something reasonable.
All right, we can bring this back to the committee. The other new policy in there is E8. Maximum administration for opioid overdose. This was recommended to the committee, basically because there's no current policy in place within the GRC Institute. And I guess should the situation arise where we have a policy in place, so that.
Correct. This is vetted by our school nurses, state materials, and actually worked on a couple drafts and submitted by the board's review.
And the committee. All right. F26 is a required policy. This is a new required policy. With changes in statute. This policy is required, so.
That's the
Yes. And then H2, community use of school facilities. this policy has gone back and forth. At the last committee meeting, the majority of the committee said they wanted the language to have all users required to demonstrate adequate insurance coverage. And then the committee also added the line in there, submitting the liability release and waiver form. I know this policy has gone a lot of back and forth between having that word shall or may. So, and essentially that would, if this policy is adopted, with the way the language is written, anyone who uses a facility will have to demonstrate insurance coverage.
Actually, now a large number of groups that could use, make use of it, that we can be members of make use of their facilities and not be able to do it because they're not big enough to afford insurance.
And I wanted to keep the name in there, but just one person.
Okay, one person, who's that?
So, but
So I'm thinking, why are we changing it? It's been in there and,
So this was, speaking with legal recommended that
yeah, I know legal would recommend, because legal doesn't deal with the public because they're legal.
legal, that, like I said, this is the legal recommendations brought to the committee to be discussed. For discussion.
I understand that, but I'm also saying that you're throwing a lot of people that could use the facilities that don't have the money to afford the insurance, that this is a public space, they should be able to use it.
yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And then, the other element to that too is, the Wellsman School particularly, opens its doors to like the Lake St. Catherine Association for their meetings and stuff like that. And, with the way it's written, they would have to have insurance coverage just to have a meeting. Again, we've seen this policy go back and forth.
So they just throw it back. That's not right.
Well, I think, we gotta find something that works for all districts, because the GRCSD policy committee really doesn't want to have branching policies where, one word might be.
No, they don't want, but
Well,
I'm just saying it's not right for our school.
correct, okay, well, I understand that. So what you're suggesting is.
Go back to
Gotcha. Anyone else have any comments on H2?
I have a question. So I just went to movie night at the school. Is that something that doesn't need that sort of?
That's an outside organization, it's not school sponsored, it's sponsored by, if it's the school sponsored, then no.
Okay. What happens if it's like a PTO sponsored?
School, it's school sponsors.
Amanda?
What if we suggest going back to May, and then in that last statement where they crossed out resulting from the use of their facilities, if you say like release and waiver form, if like required or if requested by the admin, like whoever that person may be, the principal or whoever, like saying if you're asked to provide it when you schedule your meeting or whatever you may be scheduling, then you have to provide it. But if you say may, then it's not needed unless it's requested by the admin for that specific event. So all users may be required to demonstrate adequate insurance coverage and shall agree to hold the district harmless from any and all liability by submitting a liability release and waiver form if requested by the admin. And then it pleases the people that want to ask for it, their admin can request it, but it covers the people where it's not needed.
Gotcha. I got it. Okay.
Chris, do you feel like that kind of covers the legal piece, or?
I'm not gonna weigh in on a legal issue, so I think that's something which we discussed, and once the committee then has a drafted statement, I can run by our legal, then take a look at, but I'm not a legal expert, I don't want to weigh in publicly on that.
Okay.
All right. Any other input on H2? Okay, and then don't forget A1 as well. Yes, it's A1.
On A1, Eric, there's a typo in the first paragraph, line 3, available to.
Did you say A, you said A1, right?
A1. Under policy. And then, under policy development, when you crossed out sub and subcommittee thereof, so that would just read committee. Does that mean that any committee of the GRCSU board can make recommendations for policy? Or do they only come from the policy committee?
Well, first of all, how'd you know I did it?
I didn't know you did. I'm talking to the policy committee.
Gotcha.
About
No,
the policy.
so,
Do you want to say policy committee at that point?
yeah, I mean, it's written in there, but the way it was written, it says subcommittee, and it just didn't make sense to me. So that's why the sub was just struck out. And so it says implementation of school board policies in the GRCSU, GRCSU board, or a committee thereof, which is basically the policy committee. That's kind of like how I interpreted it.
Yeah, I just wondered if that's the case, you just put policy committee there. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, and then a little bit more information on this, but we talked about that we have another existing policy, A2, which is policy dissemination, administration and review. So this policy here that we're looking at is a revised model policy, and it was intended to cover both what we currently have for A1 and A2. And it was overlooked by the policy committee when we first started looking at this. So it's confusing. You have two policies that kind of talk about the same thing. So the committee's recommendation is that we combine parts of A1 under policy dissemination, administration, review, dissemination, and try to kind of adopt both of those policies into this one, and then, should this policy move forward, the recommendation would be to rescind A2. But yeah. And then we added suggestions to revisions. Just basically what we've been doing for the last year or so in terms of policies go out to all the member districts. For like the first read, they'll come back with suggestions for revisions and move forward. So. All right. All right, is that everything on policies? All right. Sounds good. We'll send those back. To the committee. All right. General public comment. Anyone sign in? Does anyone here wish to speak? And then anyone online, if you wanted to speak tonight, you can put your name in the chat. Appreciate it. And we'll go ahead. I'm going to have a 3-minute time limit because we have other business to take care of tonight. Does someone want to keep time? No? Thank you. Okay. All right. First name up on the list is Mary Plunkett.
Hi, I'm Mary Plunkett. I have 2 kids in Middletown Springs.
You might have to get closer to the mic so people can hear you.
You mind? No. I'm Mary Plunkett. I'm with my husband, Chris Plunkett. We have Chris and Caroline in Middletown Springs in kindergarten and first grade. So I'll try to keep it brief. I just have a couple of questions. So what we're looking at basically is the increase is based on employee benefits, employee compensation, and secondary expenses for education. Did I get that right? Okay, so the first 2, employee benefits and employee compensation, that's based on a contract, correct?
Two contracts.
Okay, 2 contracts. And is that every 2 years, every 4 years?
Our current contract for teachers and is that?
It varies, so the contracts can go anywhere from a year to 3 or 4 years, depending on the situation.
Okay, great. So
We
that's-
did just settle the teacher's contract with a 4-year agreement, which included last year, this year, and 2 more. And then
Okay.
support staff contract, we also just settled last year, and that was a 3-year contract. Now it's for last year, this year, and next year.
Okay, great. So that's on a contract basis. So what we can kind of assume is that contract's not going to be less than it is right now, as far as benefits and.
Correct.
Okay, cool. So it's just kind of important. So the second question really had quick was, you mentioned you have 3 vendors, or you have to answer it for the food services. Aladdin's was mentioned, like in one of the chats for ladies. I think Abbey Room was the second, and what one is Middletown Springs?
Well, I think there's 3 in the state, and then one that the GRCSU contracts with is 11.
Is 11, right now.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah. Their name now is not Lexington, they just changed names, it was Aladdin. So that's who GRCSU has been with for the last 5 years.
Okay, and we're potentially thinking of switching that vendor to save money?
So the state requires to go out to bid. We can only have a food service contract for 1 year,
Okay,
and then we can renew it 4 times, so a total of 5 years. So after that 5 years, we are required to go back out to bid. We may have the same vendor when all's said and done, or we may have a different vendor. We don't know that at this time.
I think though, just to clarify, I think you're asking, are we presently with that vendor?
yes.
And Wells and Middletown are not. We have independent
Okay, that's,
food services, and that's where we would potentially go, is to be part of the bid.
okay.
So presently, we are not with Aladdin.
Okay, that was my question. Yeah, presently, what would we do? And potentially we would go towards a bigger
Being
vendor.
part of,
Right, and then that
Yeah.
vendor would have more say on compensation for rates for employees, what the kids are being fed.
I was just gonna interject, if you have all these questions, you can send an email to,
Okay.
Get all this information. And, I don't know, if you have other.
Yeah, so I just have one more statement and we'll be really quick and I'll pass my time on. Okay, great. So my only thing, I talked to Eric and a couple other people recently, Patty Cannon. So I'm pretty sure that this whole meeting is kind of based on the fact that the budget was only passed by 22 votes previously. So past budget, there was 483 total votes. 206 was yes, 183 was no. And so that was a 23 vote margin. So I think we're all kind of here focusing on, hey, we want to get a budget that will pass in March. And that was kind of a slim margin. There was also 83 people who didn't weigh in at all. And so they were, I'm not sure if Patty used the undervotes or how the technical term, but there was 83 people who didn't weigh in at all. And so what that kind of says to me is that they didn't want to vote yes for tax increases. They also didn't want to vote no for the school budget. So I'm just wondering if we could possibly get more information out to the community that may not have kids in schools, because they're all voters. And I'm pretty sure those 83 people, like I said, didn't want to vote for tax increases, but they also probably didn't want to vote no, down the school budget, which is important. So just wondering if there's a way we can get more information out to everybody, kind of like the town office does. They put out a budget to everybody. I know that's going to cut into some costs or ideas, but I've talked to some families. They're willing to pitch in, some cash for, for printouts. We can volunteer to put them in their mailbox, just so when people do go to vote for the school budget, they kind of know what they're voting for. And if there is an increase this year, it is because teachers got a raise, because healthcare costs are going up, because of the secondary education budget. So I just think that those 83 people are an interesting part of the whole equation of why the budget may have just passed by some majority. Maybe those 83 people would say, hey, if I knew a little bit more, I would have voted yes, or no. But I don't think we should, hopefully make any cuts until we can put it out.
We do send out an annual flyer right before voting day,
Right.
which has, there's only so much information you can put in a two-page flyer, but it has some high-level information as well as some information on, or points you in the direction as to where you could find more information. We do the annual booklets, which we don't mail out just because of cost,
Right.
But they are available at the town office, usually the libraries and the post office, as well as on the GRCSU and the school websites.
Okay.
And so that flyer does have all that information so that we try to get out as much information to the public as possible, as well as our monthly meetings and our town meetings.
Right. So that flyer that you mentioned, was that mailed to every individual
Yes.
family or, okay.
It's mailed to every household. Yeah.
Right, okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I was just thought that 83 votes was interesting, and they just didn't cast it at all, so. Okay.
Thank you. All right, Chris Plunkett.
She said it all for me. Biggest supporter. I think if there's any budget cuts, we should take from special educators and after school. That's my piece.
Okay. All right, thank you. Scott Hathaway.
I'm good. I think people are signing up.
Oh, they're just signing in that they're here, okay. All right, Cynthia Cassidy.
Something's going to me. On my class. Maybe send them a couple of your places. I know. Can't believe it.
Okay. All right, so I'll turn to anyone online wishing to speak tonight. Okay. Well, we do have, we'll have, yes, Sean Brock.
Yeah, sorry, it took me a minute with my new computer to get my my mute off.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm just participating today in support of the after-school program. We have 3 children at Middletown Springs, and both my wife and I have full-time jobs, and without the after-school program, that's really not possible. So it's really critical for us to have those jobs, to have the after school. And I think that also if we're cutting some of those programs is a short solution for a long-term problem. It's certainly not going to grow our tax base in the future. It's going to have younger families coming into the area if they're coming into an area without support that they need to be able to have their careers, to pay for the houses or they might have pre-pandemic, things like that. So again, I'm in favor of what we can do to support the after school program.
Sean, can I ask you a question, please?
You can.
I support the after-school programs. Is there a point where you guys, are you from Middletown or Wells?
Middletown.
Would you be willing to pay? I mean, you guys would pay, right, at some point?
Yeah, willing to pay. We have one of our kiddos is adopted, so there's some support that we get for that, but our other two are bio, and yeah, we're willing to pay. I'm also being on as a basketball coach again for the school, and so I'm on there for the stipend, but frankly I was using that stipend to pay for after school. That was where I was going to go with that, and anything that was left over, it was going to get donated to something for the kids. I've turned down the stipend in the past as a coach, but I was doing that this year strictly for that reason.
Okay. I'm just curious, if you're, what do you, not really my business, but what do you pay for the kids, and would it be uninteresting for you to pay more than what you're paying now? And I'm not talking significantly more, but willing to pay more. Is that what you're willing to pay?
Yeah, I don't remember offhand what we're paying, but no, Jody and I, when we talked about it, yeah, we were both on board with paying more because, again, it's a question of, being able to get jobs or have to switch schools if we have the after school support. So she's a assistant super at Mill River, and I'm a teacher over at Fairhaven High School. So, our days obviously run over into the after school timing of things. I'm not sure how many of our families here have that type of issue, but I do know when I came to do the coaching tonight for the team, there was a ton of littles running around still at 4:30. There was a few kids, so there is a lot that utilize the program. And I'm okay with it more. I think that the after school crew that handles things with our youngest, I think that they probably deserve to earn a lot more than whatever it is they're paying. They're dealing with Kat after school every day.
All right, thanks, Sean. All right. So we do have an executive session tonight. Before we move to the executive session, I'll say that our next meeting will need to approve the budget at that meeting. There'll be more opportunity for input. And if you have any other questions pertaining to the budget, reach out. Our emails are on the ERCSU website, and you reach out to the superintendent, building administrators. What's that? Yes, and then next Monday is our community engagement committee. It's the second Monday every month, and that agenda will go up at the end of the week. So, yeah, so look for that. I'm gonna share that on Front Porch Forum, trying to, more awareness for what we're doing. So,
Would you just shoot me an email tomorrow with the like first Monday and the time, and I'll throw it in your board on the calendar. So it's in there. Anything more?
It's, yeah. Okay, so we have, executive session, so we're making a motion to move to executive session for personnel and contracts. Motion by Sue, all those in favor, moving to executive session at 7:23, say aye.
Aye.
Hi. Is it the link that Chris just sent?
Yes.
So it just says January 4th on the link, so I was just checking.
I apologize for the, I'll correct that right now, so. Sorry. Give me 2 seconds.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
I can't remember if I said that. All right, motion carries. Let's do it again. All right, we're out of executive session by consensus at 9:12. The next meeting is January 4th, Middletown Springs Elementary School. Is there any other lawful business? I did have one thing to bring up really quick for our annual meeting. Because we had to vote for moderator, clerk by ballot, I ended up on the ballot again for moderator. So if anyone knows someone who might want to moderate our meeting, I would be happy to let them do so.
Cara.
Well, I mean, I'm not looking at Cara. I see her laughing, but I just say that because I think it looks better when we can get a moderator and then all board members participate as board members. So besides that, I think people might get sick of me talking all the time too. But, so yeah, I mean, if anyone knows someone, that'd be great. If not, I'll live. So, all right. Okay.
What's the date? Do you know off the top of your head?
Oh, for our annual meeting, yeah. I think it was March 1st.
March 1st. There's someone I can ask.
All right. Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
All those in favor of adjourning at 9:15?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.